Isn't it fascinating how reality is not something you observe, but something you generate? A force that bends, not to those who hesitate, but to those who decide. And as you begin to wonder what that really means, perhaps you've already noticed, haven't you? How the ones who shape the world, they're never the ones who seek approval, but the ones who carry themselves with such unshakable certainty that others can't help but follow. Because when you hold your ground, when you embody your reality so completely, it stops being a question of persuasion, and it becomes an inevitability, like the rising sun, like the turning tide. Your presence alone dictates the frame, and the frame dictates the experience. And as you begin to understand this on a deeper level, you might notice something interesting. That when someone questions you, challenges you, tries to shift your perspective, what they're really doing is testing the strength of your foundation. Because people, they don't follow the most logical reality. They follow the most convincing one. The one that feels the most stable, the most certain, the most real. As you commit, as you lock in, as you decide that your world is the world, something fascinating happens. Their resistance dissolves. Their doubts become irrelevant. Their mind, once locked in their own frame, begins to tilt, to shift, to align with yours. Because, after all, isn't it true that reality itself is nothing more than a belief, reinforced with certainty? And the more you hold it, the stronger it becomes. And isn't it funny how the moment you stop seeking validation, you start receiving it? How the second you stop proving, you start embodying. And once you do, it's almost as if the world begins to move in rhythm with you, adjusting itself to your internal state, bending to the frequency of your conviction. Because you've probably realized now, haven't you, that doubt is not the opposite of belief. It's the absence of commitment. And the more fully you commit, the more absolute your world becomes. The more effortlessly people begin to see through your eyes, feel through your frame, move with your motivation, until suddenly what once seemed like your vision has become theirs as well. And that is when you notice how influence, it isn't something you try to have. It's something that happens when you no longer need it, when you simply are. As that thought settles in, as you begin to feel what it truly means to own your reality so fully, so deeply, it becomes reality for those around you. You might start to wonder, what else becomes possible now that you know? Because isn't it fascinating how reality is not found but is forged? How the strongest version of reality is the one held with the most certainty. Because as you begin to notice right now how every great leader, every influential force, every undeniable presence in history has something in common. It's not their words, it's not their logic, it's their absolute commitment to their version of the world. Because when you know, really know, when you stand so firmly in your reality that it radiates from you, the world has no choice but to respond. People feel it, sense it, absorb it. As if your conviction alone carries a gravity that pulls everything into alignment. And isn't that interesting? How the moment you decide to fully inhabit your own world, others begin to live in it too. And maybe you've already realized that doubt is not something that exists on its own. It's only there when certainty hasn't fully taken root yet. Because have you ever noticed how the more you reinforce a belief, the more real it becomes? Like a path walked so many times, it carves itself into the landscape of your mind, until it's no longer a question. It's just the way things are. And when you hold your ground, when you refuse to yield, something remarkable happens. Those who once question you begin to adjust, shifting, recalibrating, until they see things through your frame, whether they realize it or not. Because the mind is drawn to certainty, and the strongest reality, the one that cannot be shaken, always wins. And as you feel that realization settle deeper, Isn't it funny how, the more you stop proving, you start becoming? How the less you explain, the more people accept. Because true power, it isn't in convincing. It's in being so unshakable that persuasion becomes unnecessary. And once you step into that level of certainty, the world begins to reflect it back to you. And you may already be noticing how every time someone tries to shake you, it only solidifies your stance. Every challenge, every question, every attempt to make you doubt, it only strengthened the root of your belief. Because isn't that how fire tempers steel? How pressure forms diamonds? How every test is nothing more than a confirmation of your resilience? That you begin to wonder, what happens when you take this even further? When you commit so fully, so completely that your reality, it isn't just something you hold, but something you become. Because you've already started to notice, haven't you? The shift, the alignment, the way things feel different now. And the more you let that feeling settle, the more you realise you're always meant to own this space. So the only question left is, what happens next, now that you know?